and then to Eichstatt, where I took part in the Eichstatt tunnel, which is why I ended up at Colditz.
Could you tell us something about that Eichstatt tunnel business?
Yeah, it was dug from... There were 6 blocks in Eichstatt, quite close to the wire. And block 2 was the closest, as far as I remember. And it was, in fact, the one in which the Canadians had been handcuffed. And the plan was to build a trapdoor in the loo, because it was tiled, and tunnel from there to the under the wire, which was on the edge of a hill, under a road, with a hut the other side, one hoped one might get into, to open the tunnel from. And this virtually was what happened, except that on the way there were quite a lot of snags, in that there were rocks we met and so on, and the nearer we got to the wire and the hill, the nearer the surface we had to come, because the rock was getting a bit close to the surface. And in fact, when the tunnel was broken in June of '43, we were very close to the surface indeed, which in many ways was an advantage, but of course it made it probably easier for the Germans to discover, which they never did, in spite of the fact that some nice British gentleman threw a tin over the wires telling the Germans there was a tunnel in block 2. Yeah. We were planning to get it out in the spring of '43, but because of that incident it was put off, and in fact we broke out of it on the King's birthday in June, or official birthday in June '43.
They actually put a note in a tin? Or?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it ever discovered who it was?
No. You know, people at this stage had got into a rut, and they were taking exams, and they were studying this and studying that, and they just didn't like their peace disturbed. And of course, if you've got to tunnel up, it meant a bit of an upheaval for all the other inmates.
I've read this quite often, that particularly senior officers at some camps didn't like the idea of escape at all, because of exactly what you've just said. Disturbed them.
That's true, and of course that's understandable, I suppose. But you know, when you're young and you know you don't like not being able to walk out of the front door. And anyway, you know, one felt that up to the time I got to Colditz, I felt that I might still be a useful member of the fighting forces, but then after that it was pretty obvious that the people who should have been got home were RAF people, and people who'd had expensive training and so on. I mean, an out-of-date second lieutenant in the tank regiment is not much value to anybody.
So, what happened on the actual breakout? How many of you got out?
At the time, it was a record, something over 60. And it was too many, of course, really, because that meant that there were so many people wandering about that it was worthwhile the Germans calling out the Home Guard and the Boy Scouts and everything else you could think of. So nobody, in fact, got away, because wherever they went, I was out for about 3 days, travelling by night. And eventually I'd run myself out of water, and I dived into a village, to the village pump, and somebody had thought of that before, and there was a farmer waiting there with a sawn-off shotgun.
Did you go off alone?
Yes, I did, actually. That's a mistake, too.
Was it?
Yeah. I thought it wasn't. But the fact that you hadn't got anybody to talk to, you hadn't got anybody to discuss the plans of what you were going to do and where you were going to go, although you discussed it before you got out, once you're out it becomes very lonely. And of course, you know, you've got nobody to watch out for approaching farmers or children or whatever. And it was a mistake. I had planned to go with somebody else, but at the last moment it was all changed, so I decided to go by myself.
So do you know where it was you were recaptured? Or?
No, I'm afraid I haven't the foggiest idea. All I know was that it was a very nice farmer, and he took me back to his farm, where I met his wife and his two young children, I think it was, to whom I was able to give all my chocolate, because they hadn't seen it for a long time. No, he was a delightful chap, actually, just a plain, simple, nice peasant farmer chap.
And then you were taken back to Eichstatt?
Yes, taken back, not to Eichstatt camp, but to a castle that one had seen in the distance on the top of a hill, where we were kept while they made whatever arrangements it was, from which 2 or 3 people managed to escape, actually, but they didn't get very far. And eventually we were moved from there to Colditz.
So you went into Colditz?
Yeah.
As a group?
Yeah.
So that was quite a big...
that was 50 or 60 people.
And how many were there when you got there?
At Colditz?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, it was an international type camp at that stage. There were French, Belgians, Dutch, a few British.
When was this? 41?
43.
43?
Yeah.
So it was still in...
Some people, British, have been there, of course, since the party with Kenneth Lockwood, Dick Howe, and Peter Allen, that lot, had got out of Laufen in 41, and they were sent straight to Colditz, and they'd been there since then.
Was Pat Reed still there when you got there?
No, he'd gone. No, he got away before I got there.
So
I think we got there sort of late summer of 43, and I have a feeling that Pat got out of Colditz in the spring.
43.
43. Mm.
What were your first impressions of the camp when you presumably...
Forbidding. Looked impregnable. It's awfully difficult to remember, Dave, actually, but I suppose one thought, well, this is it, you know, we never get out of here, and what's the point?
But you were fairly soon told that people had got out, right?
Well, yes, I mean, you know, we're talking to... One knew a lot of people there, of course, because people who'd escaped from other camps that one had been in all seemed to end up there. And so consequently, all the chaps in Colditz were all people who'd escaped or made a nuisance of themselves in some way or another, and so therefore, you know, morale was good, and they were good fellows. And everybody had the same sort of object, either helping or getting away.
So what sort of reception did you get from the prisoners themselves?
Well, I mean, they were surprised to see so many of us, I think. It was nice to see a lot of old friends again. And very soon, you know, we'd settled in.